Hello YouTube and welcome to my new video. My new video is special because we have a new format with my good friend Lokana Decklist now. We try to do a weekly podcast now from now on. It's called the ArtaCast. Woo. And yeah, we will talk about our, just like many other podcasts, we talk about the metagame and how it evolves from a very, or we try to do it from a very competitive standpoint. And for our first episode, we have a really good topic because Azurite Sea is not far away. It's 2 weeks from now, I think. I don't know. I think it's 2 weeks. But first of all, but I said it only once because next time he's not my guest. We are part of it. I welcome you, Lokana Decklist. Thank you that we do this together. I'm really excited to do that with you.
Yeah, thank you, man. No, it's a real pleasure, and we've done a few things like this now, and yeah, I love talking to you about the game. I like talking green purple. I like doing this stuff. So yeah, really excited to get this rolling again.
Yeah, we are connected because of our love for green purple and our despair about green purple sometimes, and that makes it special. But of course, we try to look at the metagame as a whole and not just from our little green purple world where we live in. And for the first episode, we thought about nearly all cards are revealed now. I think there could be like 10 cards left or something. Yeah, so for the first episode, we try to do an overview over the cards we like for the next set till now. We have nearly all cards are revealed now, and I think there will not be too much, probably. I don't know, maybe there is a banger on the road, but I think all legendaries are revealed now, and most of them, not most of them, but they seem to sometimes have quite an impact or have kind of a crazy effect. What could have an impact? There are some really cool cards in the next set I'm excited for. And LD2, I think. So we both made our top 5 of the cards we think are on the road for us. After that, we will talk about some underrated cards that we think could have some potential, but nobody's talking about. And maybe we talk about some other cards. I have some cards listed here I want to talk about with you. Or some other cards that could have potential that didn't make it into my top 5. Yeah. So let's start. I think we will both start with our 5th place. What's the 5th place for you? You will start.
Yeah, so it's a good place to start, actually. My 5th place is Go Tomago, which we talked about a little bit last time we spoke. It's a super powerful looking card that at first glance maybe appears to not be amazing. 2/2 evasive for 2, emerald card, inkable really importantly, slots really easily into the green purple deck, in my opinion. This is kind of what we talked about last time, that it's a bit of a slam dunk for that Sir Hiss slot, right? Which is it still does everything that Sir Hiss does, with the exception that it has 2 strength, not 3, which is sometimes relevant into Sisu's brawls, that sort of thing. That's your only drawback, but the upside is massive. The ability, when you play it, you can pay 2 to gain lore equal to the damage on an opposing character. So if someone's hit a goat with Maui, 4 damage, you can pay 2 to gain 4 lore. Looks really good in green purple and that sort of deck, because we've got all the stuff to bounce it, right? So it just joins our growing suite of reach to help us close games out. It feels like that deck at least definitely wants it, and that's a decent deck. So it's hard to imagine a world where this doesn't see play, right?
Yeah, I think so too. I think there are to be fair, it's maybe only finds place in green purple. It's the perfect green purple card. There's not many other decks that asks for a card like that, but it's all we needed. It's all what we looked for. It's perfect. like you said, it's the Maui. Do it punishes your opponent so much and leads to
Yeah,
some weird decisions by them. Um, just by this card existing. I mean, in the past, when you are turn 4, and we decided, or we thought about, do we now quest with the fox or not? Then we often maybe did it not because, yeah, we thought, oh, that Maui trade is really bad. But that Maui trade is not very scary for us anymore. Even if we don't have it on the hand, our
yeah,
opponent doesn't know that and probably won't risk it because that Maui is a ticking time bomb since then and will provide a lot of lore, maybe.
yeah,
And
totally. Like it does, it adjusts how people have to think about the game, right? Which is that we're all used to these patterns where we think about, or quite often we're calculating, well, what's the maximum lore my opponent could gain next turn? Theoretically, if they have a goat plus a bouncer in hand, that sort of thing completely messes up all this math because you've got this other variable to track, which is your top damaged character. You have to start thinking about,
yeah,
okay, if I make these questing decisions, how bad can it go for me there? And the math can get pretty complicated pretty fast with some of these things, and you really have to think 1 to 2 turns ahead with that in your mind. They might not even have it, but you can't not think about it. The threat of it is too serious. And like you were saying, chances are it only sees play in green purple because that's where it slots in the easiest. The other thing on my mind is green steel. The only real gap in that deck is reach. So we know that super good at controlling the board with early removal songs, plays incredibly powerful threats that are hard to answer, like Diablo and Prince John. But it's kind of you watch it play and you realize they're never really gaining much lore. They
yeah,
quest
that's
really
true.
slowly. They quest really slowly, and then they get to this point where okay, the opponent maybe they discarded their opponent's cards and then they top deck a Be Prepared. The opponent essentially resets the game and they really struggle to get back after that. And the thing they're really lacking is a bit of reach. So green reach is not something we've seen. Um, this is an option for them, but the tension for that deck is that their 2-drop slot is already quite contested for what they want. You know, you're
And
fighting with Morphs and Ursulas. It's hard to find the room.
by the nature of the deck, I mean, this card is generally, I think, a card that a deck wants that in that much trading happens, and
Mm.
um, in green steel, there's maybe not many opportunities to use its effect that good.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
mean, there's
point.
then the B prep, and then you will have a hard time to get this effect. I don't see it that much in green steel because it's not that reliable reach in their deck. I think maybe, but maybe I can be wrong.
Yeah,
But
it's easy to dream about the perfect scenarios, right? So
yeah, yeah,
there'll be green steel players that look at this and think, well, you know what? I could imagine a situation here where I strength a Tamatoa for 6, and then I gain 6, and I sing a song with something else, and I use my muses to bounce back my go-go, and I play it again, and I just gain 12 lore. Like, yeah, like that's like possible, and maybe it's really good. I don't know, but it's like you say, that deck really fundamentally is not looking to take a lot of trades and make a lot of you know
damaged
complex
characters.
on
Yeah,
yeah
and
it doesn't leave damaged characters. It like Bruno's
yeah.
them back to hand, or it just destroys them outright with removal songs. Yeah, it's a really good observation actually. I think maybe some people are looking to this in that deck. It might not play out quite as well as it looks, but I think just that threat of bringing reach to a deck that doesn't have
Yeah,
any is
that's
pretty strong. Yeah.
generally it's a perfect green purple card in all regards, I think,
Yeah.
but could also be so strong. And the fact just that it's that what makes this card so good, why I have it on 4, by
Okay.
the way,
Nice.
is that it's a good 2-drop as well. That's the
Yeah.
best card fact about this card. This is,
Yeah,
I think,
at its
it,
worst, it's basically Sir Hiss, right? It's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
which is a card we were already playing
yeah.
sometimes. So
This is
yeah, hard for it to look bad for us.
yes. So my fifth place is Simba, the new
Okay.
legendary Simba. Although I think it's very hard to evaluate its power. I can see so many nasty lines with this card. This in aggro decks. But it's still, you want this to shift most of the time. You don't want it to play unshifted, and you need at least 2 characters to be really, really crazy good with its effect. But I think that's not so crazy hard to do.
Yeah, it doesn't ask a huge amount of you to set those sorts
Yeah.
of lines up. The only tension really for me is that the shift 3 is great, but that, you know, if you've gone 1 drop, 2 drop, shift 3, you don't have 2 things to ready. It's kind of you want to shift it on 3 because shift 3 5 cost stuff is awesome, and you kind of don't because it's not the perfect time to do it to protect your stuff, and you know, so it's probably there's some flexibility there.
I don't see it necessarily as a turn 3 shift. I mean, you can still set up a right board and then shift it on turn 5 and ready everything.
Yeah.
And this is the way you win. I mean, if you play 1 drop, then Piglet, then maybe the Protector Simba and something else, and then turn 4 you shift and ready your Piglet and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you sing a whole new world when you shift it to refill your hand after you just played out with it. Yeah,
that's the next. Maybe he finds spot in wheel decks in the whole new world.
Yeah,
readying your aerial and such things. I was not completely sure because the gap between plays 4 and 5 was really high in my the 4 cards, the 4 other cards are way higher for me. But yeah.
Simba was on my list as well, but just got cut about 15 minutes before we started recording this. I was really high on it, and then I went down a little bit. I think there were a few on paper that it looks super strong, and it is a great card. You know, anything with shift 3 on it that costs 5, there's only so bad that can be. That's like, you know, it then goes into the same decks as the Robin Hood shift lines and stuff, and you start being able to wheel even more consistently than you can now, if that indeed is the way you want to go with it. Yeah, I think it's a great card. It's likely to see some play. It remains to be seen which sort of shell it falls into yet. But
the problem is a bit you have to play the little Simbas, and the little Simbas do not naturally see play in that decks anymore. That's a little bit of a downside for me. There's no.
This was actually that was why it got bumped from my list, because it's a great card and it's really hard just across the board. I'm sure people that are evaluating these cards themselves are all going to think a similar thing at the moment. You look at these decks that we're playing with now, it's really hard to find room to put these cool new cards in. And if something like Simba, which is a great card, but asks you to play 1 drop or 2 drop Simba, these cards are just not really good enough anymore, unless you could get something else out of them. Like Iowa Rockstar Stitch deck, for example.
Imagine this in set 1. Hey, whoa.
Well, I mean,
this in set 1.
It would be unbelievably good, but that's not the world we live in anymore. And actually, the world we live in now, the card quality is really high. It's really hard just to find the slots to put these things in. And this is a lived experience for me, by the way. This is what I did this morning when putting together some testing decks. I found myself looking out my Simba bodyguards, slotting 4 of them into a 60-card deck, and I just sort of stopped for a moment and went, what am I doing? What? This card isn't good anymore. But I'm playing it because of the big Simba, which is a real drawback, you know?
That's reasonable. The other, I was not sure between this and the new Gantu. Because Gantu is not very... it doesn't... there's not much to talk about this card, but it's just a crazy threat for lore. For 5. This is scary for nearly any deck. And still inkable, because against steel, you don't like it that much. But against red, they don't want to see this. Red-blue doesn't want to see this.
4 strength dodges all of their, strength-based removal. It's like 4 is the perfect strength number, isn't it, for dodging brawl, Medusa, and then it doesn't have 5, so it can't get World's Greatest Criminal Minded or anything. It's in that spot where 4-3 is a stat line that looks pretty fragile. It's not quite as fragile as it looks. As you say, against steel, a fair amount of the time you're going to want to just ink it. Maybe it doesn't look that good, but yeah, some of these other decks, this is a real threat that can be a little tough for them to deal with.
This is a really good card, yeah. So
I think of it the same way as that big Robin Hood from a couple sets ago, the 4/6 that costs 6.
4/5.
Quest for 4.
4/5.
4/5. Yeah.
But it's one turn earlier, but that's something. That's meaningful.
Yeah.
That's one turn earlier. So
a cool card for sure.
Yeah, in Steel Acrodex.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I'm excited. What did you? If we have the same cards, I said my fourth card was Go Tomago. So and what's yours?
I'm torn, right? This is a card that I think is super cool and just really different to anything we've seen. So it's high on my list, but if it's not playable,
I know what it is right now.
Don't. If it's not playable, don't come for me. But I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's Submit to My Will, the 7-cost uninkable.
Oh, I thought it was something else.
Oh no, it's Submit to My Will, the 7-cost uninkable green action. You make your opponent discard their whole hand, right?
That's a card that needs a lot of talk, I think, and a lot of testing. But concede.
It's I was a little cold on it at first, but some conversations that I had with people kind of brought me around to thinking, you know what, this is a pretty cool thing to kind of ramp into early in the game. If you can get yourself up to 7 ink or the ability to play it really fast, it's realistic. It's actually quite consistent that you could do this on turn 4. It doesn't make your deck completely terrible to do that either. You don't have to play a ton of bad cards. You just play all the good ramp stuff already in a kind of green-blue shell like we saw some people try to make happen last set. You can make loads of ink early, play a Clarabelle, refuel, and then just have your opponent discard their hand. It seems good, right? Like that, if you can make that happen, I just think there's high upside and it could really catch some people off guard. And a non-song action is actually super hard to prevent. It's really just bare necessities that has the potential to stop it at all. Sometimes you'll play against aggro decks. Oh yeah, true. Yeah, Pete will turn it off for the turn. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes you'll play against aggro decks as well that just put a board together faster than you can deal with it. But there's got to be something here, right? That's too cool of an effect to completely ignore.
Yeah, that's too crazy effect to completely ignore. I think it's very hard for them to evaluate how expensive you make such a card. 6 cost would be too busted probably, and 8 cost could be immediately unplayable or something. I mean, it's very hard to design such a card, I think. I think it's a very good card for the game for me, because I think it's I compared much to Be Prepared, because you can stop some silly nonsense draw engine things just by printing a cards like this. It's like Be Prepared for me, where you can just not go wide against everything because Be Prepared exists, and this is the same. Could stop this Hiram nonsense because it's not a solid strategy anymore. Maybe if this card sees play, to just have thousands of cards in your hand, because this card exists, and I think against any green decks in tournaments, if you are blue red or something, even if you know this card is not very popular, maybe your opponent is silly enough to play this and punish you by drawing thousands of cards. I could see this not only in a strategy that revolves around it completely. I could also see that in a deck like green purple or something, where you just play this as a 1 or 2 off and and play this. I mean, there are many decks that doesn't want to see that effect happen. Yeah, this is. I think it's very good to print a card like this.
Yeah, it's a cool effect to exist that does change. It's a kind of a bit of a running theme for this set, actually, of just cards that maybe they're not quite on the same raw power level as some of the staples in the current format, but they push new types of decks in a way that we haven't seen before. A lot of the things that might enable whole deck types to be built around them have just not really shown up in previous sets, or they've been really underpowered, not worth exploring too much. There are cool tools in this set that actually, for the first time, have me excited for a proper shake-up. It's not just what new things you add to Steel Song, red purple, red blue, green purple, and then like see what happens outside of that. There are genuinely new ways to play the game, and that's really exciting thing to see. And I think this is one of them, right? It's a big flashy action that has a non-board based impact on the game that can be huge, but also like you could get kind of punished for trying to do it. And I think it's really nice card to see.
Yeah. And yeah, we will all need to test this if it's good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw already some crazy combos like turn 2 Tipo, turn 3 you play either Iago or the Starlight Vial. That reduces the cost by 2, and then you can play this on turn 4. Yeah, on turn 4. And I mean, that's something, but all need to be tested because against I read a lot of people saying, "Oh, this is too busted." Turn 4, but your opponent is not silly, you know. If you play turn 3 the Vial, they will have a board then, and you did nothing the whole game till turn 4. You did nothing. You did really nothing, and
you have maybe a Tipo.
Yeah.
Best case scenario there is like a Tipo on the board.
Best case scenario.
Sometimes maybe, there's no Tipo.
Yeah, that sometimes there's even no Tipo, and so I think this whole strategy is maybe the combo pieces of this are still viable, but I think to play a deck only for this combo is not.
But that's an interesting thought. I just want to sort of defend the combo. I do agree with you, but to defend it a little bit, the other piece that enables that is Fishbone Quill. If you do turn 2 Tipo, turn 3 Fishbone Quill, that also enables this submit to my will on turn 4. That doesn't sound like a combo to me. That sounds like what blue decks just do, right? Tipo, Fishbone Quill, that's already their turn 2 and 3, and they live through that.
That's something, yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh yes,
you just need.
You just need Tipo, Fishbone. Yeah, true. Yeah, somehow I didn't. Yeah, of course. That's way better.
The difference that makes this much scarier than doing the same thing in either blue steel or blue red is that once blue steel or blue red have gone Tipo Fishbone, the things they do then start clearing the board and catching up. When this has done its thing, you're still playing blue green.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's what I mean.
You have to work out how you're gonna retake this board, and it's not quite as easy. Like maybe you Under the Sea, maybe you do something like that, but it's not as easy as the other decks find it. And
imagine your opponent. Imagine your opponent starts with Flynn Zizo or something.
The game's pretty much over.
Yeah. So it's an interesting card, cool effect. I think the effect is needed in the game, and it's a good card and could be very strong, of course.
Yeah, someone will break it and make it look really cool, and when they do, I want to be able to say that I believed in this card from day one.
I think
never in doubt.
But this is kind of a card that's almost always overrated. I don't know. These crazy effects are always, people think, whoa, but when we see it realistically, then often it goes way lower, because just by the existence of this card, everybody knows I won't draw 4 cards with Hiram when I know you turn 5 now. Also that's always needs to be. It's not that you just discard 8 cards from me because I'm dumb and I drew the whole time
Yeah.
and made nothing. So yeah, it's always need to be in the right context, but it's a powerful effect.
Yeah, it's a cool
Okay.
one.
So it's then this time I will start. So my 4th place was Go Tomago. Third place, I think you wouldn't expect that from me.
Okay.
Maybe you would expect it, but it's Twin Fire.
I did not expect that.
And I'm absolutely crazy high on this card.
Really?
It's super powerful. I think it's super powerful. I'm really sure this is super powerful. This is such a tempo swing. It's unbelievable for me. It's also one of the cards, and there I have to say clap to Ravensburger. Cause this is one of the very rare cards that are better on the draw than on the play. And that's what I really like about this card, and it makes hopefully the gap a little bit closer. I think this is a reason. It's uninkable. That's the problem. But it's basically a Baboom with this crazy upside of. That's why I say it's on the draw better, because you exchange the card advantage that you had from being on the draw for board presence, and you have to take it in the right context. It needs the right meta to be good. That's absolutely clear. I mean, in the world of Diablo, this is crazy good. That's imagine they play a morph on turn 2 and play Diablo. This is unbelievable. Yeah. It's unbelievable. But of course, if red blue is 80% of the meta, then it's just but I see it like this. They play 1-drop, you play 1-drop, they play 2-drop. You shoot both, and suddenly you're on the play, you could say, because you're then ahead on the board.
And up on cards in hand as well.
Yeah, and that's. I think this card is. It's of course not in every meta a natural 3 to 4 off, but it's a very good card. I think in a vacuum, in a just rate this card. I don't know the meta, rate this card. I think it's very strong because it does so much for a 2 cost card. And I just want to say it's very good that they print card like this that make you come back from board disadvantages by for example discarding cards, because this is does cost nothing, and that's the exact thing how you come back from being behind on the board.
It's a really good, like, you've made a very good case for that card, and that's not a card I looked at for a very, very long time, and I think it probably is a lot better than I give it credit for, or did give it credit for previously. I mean, like you say, if they were to play a Diablo, shift Diablo, morph turn 2, and then you just play this, that is game over. However, that depends on them seeing your hand with Diablo on turn 1, seeing Twin Fire, and still doing both of those things anyway. And if that happens, I would say that perhaps you had a good chance of winning that game regardless.
And in the worst case, I mean, it's still a Baboom. You don't need to do the second effect. I mean, Baboom was played. I mean, Baboom is inkable, to be fair, but you can still hit only the Diablo if they only have the Diablo. That's still good enough. So I think any aggro deck does not want to see that. This is a menace against every aggressive strategy in this game.
I could certainly imagine them.
Yeah, in our deck, Banzai Merfolk.
I mean, it's really. We should just be saying that this card is completely unplayable and forget it exists, because I'm pretty sure it hurts us more than anybody else, any other deck.
There are some downsides. I mean, so for example, it's uninkable, of course, and Steel Song, for example, does not want to play this because it's no song, and so maybe it will see less play that a card should be in a third place spot for me, but I just
Yeah, sure.
wanted to say how powerful I think this effect is in an uncertain
Yeah.
field. I think, yeah. So this is very high for me. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. And very cool design as well, like you say. Really nice that these sorts of designs are happening where I don't know, it's a lower cost catch up mechanic. We're used to
Yeah.
these kind of catch uppy type cards come like 7 cost cards, right? They're Be
Yeah.
Prepared
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Clarabelles and things that enable you to gain parity on a resource, but they all come later in a game. And yeah, it's really nice to see something like this. That
And yeah, like I said, it's. Can you imagine another card that exists now that's better on the draw than on the play? There's not many of them, at least.
no, there aren't.
Or I don't know any. Maybe Grab Your Sword or something, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's conditional. But this is very, very good.
Mm.
Yes, that was mine. And your third?
Cool. Yeah, my third. I need to think about what it is. Yeah, this I'm hoping this is on your list because I think this is outright like one of the most powerful cards in the set. Sail the Azurite Sea. The
Stop. We have to say it right. It's called Sailor to the Azurite Sea because they designed it for Sailor. Shout out to Sailor. It's so funny because he's the red-blue guy of the community, and they printed a card that contains his name. So we have always in the future from now we have to say it's Sailor to the Azurite Sea. Keep going.
I have no problem with that. That feels very well earned. Yeah, that was kind of my first thought when I saw the card as well. Of like, is somebody like DMing him like, hey, do you want like a you
Do
know
you
how
want an own
good
car?
yeah, you know how good Tipo and One Jump Ahead are. Like, do you just want like you're thinking about maybe making a more busted version of it and making it inkable, and then we'll stick your name on it as well, just so everyone knows we did it for you. But yeah, it is so good. This is the power level on this is just
Yeah, it's
you
my
can look at
second
this
place.
as yeah, this effect of turn 2 ramp effect is something that we've had in the game for a long time, but this is significant for the decks that want more of those effects. It gives you access to more.
Yeah.
But for the decks that want the same amount but like a little bit more upside, this is also better in a lot of circumstances. It's not a song, so you can't sing it like you could with a Tipo. Like Tipo can sing One Jump Ahead or something. But One Jump Ahead takes the top card, takes an unknown card from the top of your deck, puts it into your inkwell. This effectively puts the worst card in your hand into your inkwell, right? Replaces itself. Instead of going into the inkwell, you get the unknown card on the top and get to pick the thing you don't need to go in, with the caveat that it's inkable, right? So it has to be an inkable card. I'm right in saying that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to be the inkable card. Yeah.
Yeah. So for Magic the Gathering players, this is effectively the card Explore, which is been a playable card across multiple formats. And you could probably talk for a long time about this, but I don't think it's necessary to. It's an effect that we know is really good. It has an established role in multiple top tier decks and does the same job but slightly better. It's a slam dunk. Like, this is a crazy powerful card.
I mean, it's an no-brainer for off in nearly any blue deck probably. And the biggest upside is for me that it's not a death draw in the end game, so you can replace it where Tipo and One Jump is just a bad draw in any in any end game scenario. And all these things that you said. What do you want more from a ramp card? I mean, it's this kind of card that don't win you games. I mean, it's kind of passive good because you don't think, oh, they had the sailor to the Azurite Sea, they won. That we don't say that because it's not the card that does crazy things on the board or something, but passively it will raise the power level of blue decks by a large amount. By a good amount, But I don't know why they printed it, because the blue decks were not struggling. But okay,
they weren't feeling too bad about their ability to ramp on turn 2. It was pretty consistent. It was way better than a lot of other decks are able to do on turn 2. And Yeah, I mean the rich get richer, don't they? Must be nice to be a blue player.
I mean, in Pritcha, I think if Blue Red plays probably both 4 times, both Tipo 4 times, or this 4 times to have more consistent 2-drop ramp, and all of them are inkable. So I think they get more consistent ramp and better endgame top decks on the same. Or maybe they play only 2 Tipo or 3, but I think it's so important to have 2-drop ramp, and they had to play the 1 jump, which they don't want to play because it's uninkable and a song, and this is neither. This is crazy good. Yeah,
I can't stand to look at this card for much longer because it makes me upset. It's never a card that you're going to think, "Ooh, that won me games," right?
Yeah,
but I guarantee you it will. Like you won't realize it, but this will win you games whether you know it or not. And it's like you say, super easy of just.
This has to be in any top 5 list from the new set.
Yes,
I think.
I don't think you could ignore it. No.
Yeah. So this was my second place, and your third. So you have to say the next your second place.
My number 2. Okay, my number 2 is Basil, the Floodborn Basil.
Oh, and really?
I'm really surprisingly high on this, but not for a positive reason. It's more like there's only so many times this can happen to me before I start to be super scared of this kind of effect, right? So I don't look at this and think, "Woo, I really am excited to play with this card." I look at it more like, how many times do we need cards with static effects that are basically repeatable every turn, and you don't need to exert them to get that value? Like, how many of those do we need before we realize they're an issue? This is not like you can't put this Basil in the same camp as Prince John or Bucky because it doesn't have ward, obviously, but it's still reasonably tough to remove, and it can sit there discarding cards quite often. I think it's better than people are giving it credit for, and maybe it would have had a better place in my sort of underrated list, but I think a few people kind of realize it's really good. I'm not sure where the downside is. Like, you just stick it in these green steel morph piles or something, and often this will help you achieve as much as like a beast would or something. It just helps you empty your opponent's hand out instead of drawing you cards.
Maybe I'm too low on it. I just saw this card and think, which green deck wants to ink on more than 6? You need to do that. You probably are happy to do that when this card is on the board, but at least that's value equal, because do you play? I mean, this could, if blue-green is a thing, then I think this is a very good card for the blue-green deck, because you can use the effect twice. Is it? Yeah, you can use this effect twice.
Yeah, it's whenever you ink a card. So if you put more than one card in your ink, well, then you get to do it more than once. There's a couple of ways you can think about it. I see your point that these decks don't really want to ink that high, and often they don't have the resources to do that. But maybe you can think of it more as every turn you have this in play, like the worst inkable card in your hand becomes a 1-cost sudden chill.
Yeah, that's true.
And
true.
And is that good? Probably a lot of the time when you've run your opponent out of some resources. But there's, also sudden chill is kind of a dead draw late game. Like, maybe I'm super deluded and this card's bad, but
no. I think you have a good point there.
It's like you were saying about the I can't remember the name of it, the twin shot card, the one that kills 2 things.
Yeah.
Like you were saying about the design of that, just the nature of its design makes you put it on the list. That's like why this is on my list, is I'm afraid of these repeatable value engines that you just can incidentally do things with. And if there is a blue-green deck this time round, you probably want something like this.
This is in this
depending on how the build comes together. Yeah. am skeptical about even talking about blue-green because I feel like the last 3 sets in a row I've looked at it and been like, whoa, it's time for blue-green to exist. And then a week in, I'm like, whoa, I just wasted a week of testing.
The problem is
Just
always this sport thing for blue-green that hold it back for a long time. You can do stupid things, but then your opponent quests. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and that's why the peak of the blue-green experience is right now, when these cards only exist as spoilers and we don't have them in our hands, because right now they're doing everything that they can in a vacuum. And actually what happens is, in reality, you play these cards and then your opponent goes, Mr. Smee on turn 2, and you're like, oh, I lost the game. Oh, how can I ever beat that? Because these things are so linearly powerful, as long as your opponent isn't doing
That's
anything,
nothing.
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like that could be the markdowns on it. I'm open to this card not being good, but the repeatable nature of this thing, and it just sticking it in morph piles, I think it's. I was surprised to see it was an uncommon when I saw the spoiler, right? Like I thought, okay, well that's like a super rare Basil sort of thing at least, but
you made a good point for me to with this, what you said about you can make any card in your hand, make it 1-cost Sunchill. That's I never saw it that way, because I thought, do you want to ink higher than 6? But that's a good point.
It's something, right? Like it's maybe there might be better options, but I think it's a playable card, and I've definitely got it way too high up the list. I think I probably just wrote these cards out in the order I thought of them in instead of actually my top list. But my number 1 is definitely my number 1. So
so I think we have
on.
the same number 1. We have both or second. So let's go to number 1, and it must be Maui, is it?
It's of course. It's
okay, let's talk about this powerful card. And then we see it sucks, and then we remove it from our decks and delete this YouTube video.
We just scrub it from the internet. That's fine.
No, I saw this card and initially thought, what is this? You can make so many points where this card is very good, to be humble. It's crazy. The first thing is, I don't know why they made it evasive. That's totally why. That makes no sense for me. Why is it too bad without evasive, or I don't know.
That's my question as well. Like, normally, I'm always asking about cards that are slightly too bad. You know, that's like the sort of thing, like I say about Magicka Dispel or something. She's fighting against all these ward threats that discard things, and she doesn't have ward. She's just a 2/5. It does nothing. I'm like, was this card too busted with ward? Like, but this is more like a why was this evasive added? I mean, for what I want to do with the card, it's perfect. So yeah, thank you. But to me, it looks like it's pushed, right? It does a lot of things, and you could fixate on any one of these lines of text on the card and start to think of different ways of building your deck and things to do with it. Which, you know, that bottom ability, the gaining a lore when you play an action. Well, where does your mind go first? You start thinking about cheap actions that draw cards, and you start filtering through your deck. You can have big swingy turns where you gain a bunch of lore. Lines up really well with cards like that new Tigger as well, that gets +1 lore for each action you play. You could start wanting to go off in a Storm combo-y style deck. Or you can just do, which I think you're probably more interested in doing, just rebuy good actions.
Just slam it in a random red-purple deck and do. I mean, there will be nearly no deck when you have 4 slots left or so, and you think, what could I play? Maui is always never a bad addition in your deck. I mean, there's very rare decks that play no actions at all. And the crazy thing, the crazy thing about this card is, first of all, it freezes the board most of the time. That's the crazy thing. From an opponent perspective, you can't quest anymore as long as this sits on the board. Most likely, I mean, if you are on 16, you can quest, but if you are not, then you really don't want to exert your characters. It's a threat because of the second effect. It probably can stick 2 or 3 turns on the board. Depends on the deck. At least you won't. I think that this card leads to some decisions about your removal package in many decks because you need answers for this. And to be fair, there are quite a good amount of answers. I mean, it dies to Zeus at least, and
more things kill this than you might think, right? It looks pretty unkillable, but it's it's a bit more easily removed than it might appear. And of course, being a 6-cost thing as well, that's the other. Like, often this will be removed by Be Prepared, right? If you just run this out on turn 6, I'm not suggesting you just feed it into a Be Prepared. Like, please don't do that, or you'll lose the game. But that'll be, there's a very versatile 7-cost removal option that comes straight after somebody's played this.
Yeah, and but the upside is just. I don't know what you can say about this card. Just read it and think, wow.
The thing I keep coming back to is that, like you say, when you play this just onto the board, tap out the sticks, play it, it completely changes the fabric of what the opponent could do, and what becomes it freezes the board. That's the best, like, as you said, that's the best way of putting it. Their decisions have completely changed because no longer are they thinking about, oh, well, I might lose my thing to Maui. It's now, when Maui kills my thing, they also fish that friends on the other side out of their discard. Suddenly it goes from poor choice that maybe upsets your clock to catastrophic game-losing mistake to make a poor questing decision into this. But where this goes crazy is when you can give it rush, which is a lot easier than it might look. I'll propose to you a couple of really simple lines, right? Red, purple, first of all. My board is a rabbit and a Peter Pan Shadow Finder, which gives other evasive characters rush, and it's turn 6, sorry, I've got 6 ink, and then I just play my Maui. It has rush because of the Shadow Finder. I take something out. I return a Beaking Undisputed from my discard to my hand. I sing it with the rabbit. I gain a lore off the Maui. I've removed 2 things for nothing. My card that I played onto the board is still there. Everything is there still. Best case scenario, they can wipe the board now, and I still gain a card back with my rabbit, and I'm like +2 cards from the interaction. So it's pretty wild. And the same thing happens in red-blue with Vitalosphere, right? You just have a Vitalosphere hanging around. Slam this thing down, play my Maui, give it rush, skip it in, take something out, rebuy how far I'll go.
And it has 7 strength, kills castles. What's meaningful still?
It's crazy. This card is wild. Yeah.
I think red, blue, and red, purple are the decks that immediately come into my mind to play this. Red, purple for Peter Pan synergy is crazy good, and for Elsa also, I think, a very good synergy.
Yeah.
Because you can exert something. It's also
Elsa's
very
good on the frozen board.
Yeah. Also tempo wise, you can sing friends with him and still get the lore, and it's crazy. It's really, really, really good. It's maybe there's a small scenario where we test this card and we think, okay, it eats really every time removal when it hits the board, and so it's not good enough. Because that's the only really downside about this card. It does nothing when it enters the board.
Yeah, you need those specific scenarios where it gets rushed to do anything like that. And yes, those won't always be present. In fact, they'll probably be kind of, sort of rare. You can't expect that to happen every game.
So that's the only scenario I see where this card will not be good enough. Because but it's hard to imagine that it won't see. I mean, red, blue, for example, you can play this turn 4, and then you play all your stupid cantrip things, and that's turn 4. This one, what's going on? And the saddest thing about this card is, it's really bad news for green purple. This card is really, really bad news. This is not a card that green purple wants to see on the board. We have no reliable removal for that. It has evasive. It's really not what we want to see. That's really, really sad for me.
You know, this keeps happening to us, right? Like every set, we sit and just say the same thing of, well, we got nothing, and other decks got cards that are specifically good against us.
Let's
But
play green purple.
yeah, exactly. We'll try it again. We've got another couple of months into it. Let's see what we can get moving. And somehow it's always kind of fine, right? Because this is the other thing is, yes, red blue could play this on turn 4. Yes, that is an absolute nightmare for us, of course. But we do still have the option to go underneath these decks.
Yeah, that's true.
But it might get harder. It might get harder to do that. And also, maybe we can mind game them. Maybe we only give them good trades into our goats, so they put 4 damage on their Maui, and then we go for 4.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe that works to our advantage. But yeah, it's definitely a nightmare card for us to see. The game is really hard to pull back from there unless we start going back to bounce, like unconditional bounce-based removal, like Mother Knows Best. And
that's what I want. That's why I think this card is so bust, because there are really many decks that have where this is just a hard task to remove. I think there's
yeah,
not. I mean, Green Steel, I know they have Bruno and so, but they don't always have it. And if not, then it's unkillable nearly for them, and they can't quest when it hits the board. And Red Purple, for example, has only Tremaine or B Prep. They can't do anything else.
yeah.
So it's still very hard to remove, but of course the Zeus weakness is the biggest weakness maybe for this card. But Zeus is always also a card that is not in every steel deck. It's not in green steel, or maybe it will, but not in the versions now. It's in Steel Song, yeah, but and in purple steel too. But it's not in blue steel. It's not in
no.
Also it's not super popular card. So
no. The only other thing you could say about the ways that this gets removed is if this is as good as we think it is, and red purple starts playing it in high numbers, and red blue plays it in high numbers, you're then incentivized to put more actions into your deck because you play this. So maybe those decks prey on each other by going back to some number of Dragonfire, that sort of thing. These removal options that haven't seen a lot of play for a long time might start looking a little better again when you...
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like they are both a good answer to Maui, and if you're playing Maui, they get way better into your deck. So... And that's like the recipe for cards that wind up really busted, is that like the cards that you have to play to beat them also synergize well with them. That's a recipe for a card that ends up in tons of decks.
That's like, true.
Like Let the Storm Rage On, that sort of thing. It's like the number one answer it's like the only turn 2 answer to removal to fast aggressive creatures that also gets better when you play like some of the best aggressive creatures like Diablo and Cinderella and stuff, and it becomes this sort of cyclical must play steel to beat steel metagame. You could wind up with the same sort of situation in Ruby.
And it's also because it would otherwise be really bad. It's when it challenges, it must not banish the character. So I think there are scenarios when you have Peter Pan in this and the opponent has a Tamatoa. You can't if it would have to banish, for example, then it wouldn't work because you run with the Peter Pan first and then he has no rush anymore. But here you can just go first with him. I mean, that's not very not very, very meaningful, but I think why did they not say banish a character? Because it would have been too bad otherwise, or I don't.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
It's unplayable otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's overstated. If you look at vanilla cards, it has vanilla stats. That's also something.
Yeah, it has a lot of text for a 6-cost card that's inkable.
Yeah.
There's a a ridiculous amount going for this card. It's
Yeah,
hard to imagine it being anything other than one of the best cards in the set.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so we have both the. I thought about this, that we have both the same cards on the first place.
They were pretty close, right?
Yeah, I mean
There are
three
some really
cards we had.
powerful things we haven't talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. We have Go Tomago, Sailor to the Azurite Sea, and Maui all in our top 5. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I expected. Are there other cards? What do you think? Let's talk about some other underrated cards. Other cards do you think are underrated? When you see what the community says about the cards.
Yeah, so I don't really think it's that people are saying any of these cards are bad. It's just that they're not generating a lot of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
In my notes, I'm cheating. I'm rolling 3 into 1, and I've just labeled it cool 1-drops. So this is and I'm thinking about the red Moana, a
Uh-huh.
3/2
Yeah.
that can only challenge conditionally. That is a very cool different 1-drop
Yeah.
that's hard to sort of, it does force your opponent's hand to challenge into it, and it's hard to do that profitably in those early turns. The other one is the purple Diablo,
Mm-hmm.
0/1, draws a card when it dies, similar to the Cusco effect. It's just a little quester that sits there. If it gives you a playable purple Diablo, we do already have one in 2/1, but it's like really bad. This is way more playable if you
Mm-hmm.
did want to play a green purple Diablo deck with 8 1-drop Diablos in it. To give you more consistency, you could do that. And the other one is the green 1-drop Fred, the
Oh,
1/1.
that was also on my list because I
Yeah,
think this is really underrated card.
yeah,
It's a really, if you, I could see this as a Murfolk replacement if you don't want an uninkable Murfolk, and this will often get you 3 lore.
yeah.
Very often, very often. And what do you want more from a 1-drop? I also think this is under. I did not see anyone talking about this card, but
Yeah,
if you want to play an aggressive green deck, then play this. Why not?
yeah, totally. It's like you say, it's going to get you 3 lore a lot of the time. It's going to get you more sometimes. Also, sometimes it's going to get picked off by removal, and you're going to think, "Ooh, that wasn't so good." But then it probably did the job that a Pegasus could have done anyway, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's you don't need to get a lot out of these 1-drops, and against some decks, this will get more than it deserves to get, right? And that's
Yeah.
with a deck like green purple, every single point of lore counts so much. We're often hobbling over the line in like a critical turn where if we didn't win that turn, our opponents would massively be able to swing the game back in their favor. And just getting that a little bit more ahead sometimes makes all the difference. So it's definitely one I'm looking at.
Yeah. Imagine against Red Blue, they play Tipo turn 2, and then even if they run over it, it did 3 lore. 3 lore is. You don't want more than 3 lore from a 1-drop, and you will probably never get more than 3 lore out of a 1-drop.
No, unless it's called Daisy Duck.
Yeah, unless it's called Daisy Duck, that's true. But then you provide the opponent with some card draw.
Yeah, that has its own drawbacks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is underrated. Yeah. What I also think is underrated, I don't know, underrated, nobody talks about it, like you said, is it's an action called Thievery. I think it's very undercosted for its effect. I mean, there exists a set 1 card that costs 2 and removes
Yeah,
1 lore
uninkable,
from
right?
removes 1 lore from your opponent. And this is
not so good.
Not so good. And this is, I think it's an undercosted effect for 1. Yeah, it's just I really think it could see play. I'm not completely sure, but in a deck with Maui or something, this is a really good card because I see this most likely as synergy with Maui, because there will often be scenarios where all what you want is remove lore from your opponent or gain lore by yourself, and then it's the best thing. I think in red purple mirror matches, this would be a lot of times you would love to have a card like this in your hand just to play now, even if it costed you a hand card, because it's card disadvantage, of course. And you don't want this on your opening hand, and you don't want this. But I think it's playable for its.
It's inkable for those situations, right? Which is
Yeah.
like often this is going to be your first choice card to ink, but you will get into situations in the game where it's one of your like happiest top decks to see in these ground out games. And like you say, there's so much synergy there with all these actions matter cards that actually for the first time look good, like Maui. That once you start, if you were going to go down that route of I want to stick a Maui and then see how many cards I can draw and actions I can play in one turn, hard to imagine that something like this isn't part of that, right? Where you're trying to gain like 6-7 lore in a turn. This will definitely help you do it.
So this is one of the cards. Do you have something else?
I'm not sure if this is good at all. In fact, I'm quite convinced it's bad. But Maleficent Staff, the two cost purple item. For quite a long time, I've been trying to make a version of green purple work, which is super all in on bouncing. So full suite of Mother Gothels, playing Genie on the job, maxed out on kits, back to playing Mother Knows Best, that sort of thing. Full tempo as it used to be, not just questing ahead of the opponent, but every time they play something, trying to get it back in their hand. This is something that could make that deck pretty cool, and probably the sort of thing I would build and take to my locals or something for a more casual tournament. I think a really cool alternative way of gaining lore. And of course, this punishes all of the bounce package as well. When your opponent starts bouncing their own things with their snakes and foxes, you gain lore, which is pretty cool. And I think, again, a very different effect. I can't imagine this making much noise at the top tables of major tournaments, but it's a card that not a lot of people are talking about that I think is playable. Again, one of those things that kind of starts to open up a slightly new archetype, or at least a different way of playing an existing deck.
And maybe Milo Tetch finally becomes playable.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. He needs a little help, poor Milo. But
is it when all on the same time? You still get lore for each one. That if all at the same time returning to the hand, you still get.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to have to pull it up now.
I think you get the addition, the summary.
I think it's per character.
I think so too.
Character is it's going to look pretty silly watching this when we have a picture of it on the screen, but I can't find it.
Whenever one of your opponent's characters, items, or locations is returned to their hand from play, gain 1 lore.
Yeah, so I think it would trigger for each one if you did have a Milo type effect. Yeah.
Milo Thatch.
Wow, we did it. We broke Milo Thatch. It only took what, 3 sets, 4 sets?
Yeah, set 2, I think, or set 3.
Yeah.
I have another one that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it will see play, but also not talk much, and it's Madame Mim, the new Madame Mim. For 2, choose and discard a card, gain 1 lore. I could see this as a really threatening finisher for some decks. I mean, if you know your opponent plays this, you have to be very aware of what you're doing and how far you let him go with questing.
Yeah.
Because at some point they can decide to dump their complete hand to gain 4 lore or something. Don't know. Maybe it's too expensive or it's uninkable too, and it's hard to. For me, it's hard to say how good this card is.
It's one I've looked at a lot of times because the upside is great, and when you're in the late game, turning every single card in your hand into a goat basically to close the game out is fantastic. And there'll be decks like Blurple that can do that really well. They get to these high ink totals, and they are good at keeping some amount of cards in their hand, and perfect sort of deck to just go, okay, slam this, close the game out, get over the line, and cool. It's really, really miserable as a 3-drop, which I really don't like.
That's true.
It's not.
That's true.
when you play this on turn 3,
Yeah,
you're
it's so bad.
you probably don't look directly at your opponent for fear of judgment and the shame that you feel as you run this out. I'm like, yeah, I just mulligan 5 cards and like my hand is now 3 rabbits and a Mim that gains lore.
This
Like,
was the best I got.
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. They probably start to feel pretty excited, which is not generally a great sign for any
No.
card. But when this is good, it's really good. So it is something that's it's been on my mind and probably something I'll look to test a little bit. But this has got to be at its best in a shell like blue purple, right?
Yeah, and also only as a 1 or 2 off. So
Yeah.
yeah. So it's not super busted, but I think eventually you could see some top decks with the 1 off of this in a deck, maybe.
That's it.
Be, yeah.
It's a threatening sort of one of for the late game for those decks, and for a lot of them. Yes, it's bad on turn 3, but it also isn't the end of the world. At least you played something. It's not like it's not playable on turn 3, right?
That's true. Yeah,
you can think of it as like if you think about other tools that some like really narrow things that people use for reach, like the 6 cost red action that gains 2 lore and drains 2 lore, Pirate's Life. That is only ever a late game sort of closer option or something that you might play in the mid game to when you're racing and try to stop your opponent getting over the line. But if you could also play that as a 2-3 on 3 in extreme circumstances, that would look a lot better, right? So there's a little bit of flexibility that sometimes it does something outside the late game.
And I have one last card that I think is underrated. And in a vacuum, this card is not very good, but I think in the decks like they are now, this card would be playable and would probably be played as a 1 or 2, and it's the Scar, the 5 cost Scar, that has the Teeth and Ambitions effect in itself, and quests for 3. In a red-blue deck, this is really not bad. It kills Diablos, it kills Flints with your with your Tipo, or with your Kamatala, and in a mirror match, it's still threatening to provide 3 lore with 4 strength to just threat for questing. It's not a super powerful card, I think, but it would only fit in red blue. But people were preying on this very much, how bad it is, and I think it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's a role player, right? It does its thing, and sometimes you're going to be able to quest for quite a lot with it without your opponent at that point in the game probably isn't massively interested in. What's the best way to put it? So at that stage of the game, if you're playing red-blue, you're looking to retake control of the board a little bit. You're not really in a racing situation. It's going to leave this 4 strength thing that you can then take a trade with after getting a good Teeth and Ambitions off of it. Or you can just start like clocking your opponent out with it, and they're probably not going to trade into it because they're trying to get underneath you, right? Like you're the best late game deck in the game.
Yeah.
And that's something that's the new dimension that it adds to the deck for me, is that if you were to play it in that, you then have this thing that like one of your removal abilities just leaves behind this 3 quester that suddenly you've just randomly got this great clock in play while you keep doing your stuff. And interesting to see how opponents react to that, because often it's going to lead to a good 2-for-1 for you.
Probably, or I don't know, but could be that there are too many better options in the uninkable spots for the decks that it could see play, but it's better than people treat it.
It's the sort of card that a couple of sets ago everyone would have lost their minds and said, "Oh, this is the best thing for Ruby, Amber, Mufasa." Like now you can't say that because that deck's beyond dead, right?
Yeah.
That deck is gone. It does not exist.
There's one card I'm surprised we didn't talk about yet, and it was in neither of our lists, and I thought it was one of the best cards in the set. And it's the Oswald. initially I thought this card is absolutely busted,
Hmm.
but I thought about it more and got away from it. I mean, the effect is still powerful. Whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an item card, you may play that item for free.
Mm.
That's it's a powerful effect. I think the
Yeah.
problem is just the cost of this card and that it's uninkable. You really want to ramp on turn two. That's what's really hurt this card. And any point later, it's not that good. I mean, it's not super bad, but it's yeah. And by the
Yeah.
decks, how the decks are designed right now, you have to be realistically. They play like 15 items or so.
Mm.
So it hits only each fourth time. So that I mean, there's some higher potential with Dime, and so I know, but how often does Mufasa hit a Maleficent dragon? That's yeah.
Yeah. At first, I was evaluating this card a lot like Chicha.
Mm-hmm.
The same stat line, 2 cost unlinkable. And at some point during that comparison, I just completely lost track or forgot that this happens every time you ink and not just on the second time you ink in a
Mm-hmm.
turn. Um, it is a really powerful card. This
Yeah,
is the sort of
it's
thing that you look at it and you think, okay, well, this is like a build around. You could either just slap it into a card with 15 items in it, or build around it even more. If you think about those like queen type,
yeah,
the red blue builds with the queen in it and Maurice's workshop, it's got to be a slam dunk for that, right? These ones that are really um, heavy on items, it's got a slot in there. But I'm really torn and honestly surprised at how little conversation I've seen around it for things like red blue. Maybe the room just isn't there. Maybe you would rather ramp on two, and then you've got better things to do from every turn after that. If you want to gain card advantage, but the only real what it's really powerful, obviously, but like, what is this doing for you? You're sometimes flipping porpsicles, and then you feel great about it.
mm-hmm.
But you flip a porpsicle, you get to draw a card. Great, it did a Chicha impression, right, for one turn. Sometimes you flip a quill. Cool, we're up on a significant amount of ink value from that. Once in every 30 times, I guess, on average, it's going to flip a dime, and you're going to think you won the lottery, and that's fantastic. But outside of that, it's not doing. You see what I mean? That you've got this sort of quarter chance to hit in most of these decks with the number 25% chance to hit based on the number of items they play. And then within that 25%, at least 25% being the porpsicles are like a very middle of the road hit, and then the others can be slightly better, sometimes slightly worse. Do you see what I'm getting at? It's really
Yeah,
good,
yeah,
but then actually in these decks that are playing lots of items, it probably isn't going to have a huge amount of impact a lot of the time. And there'll be times that you play it where you just think, man, I actually wish this was Cheater.
yeah. That's true. Yeah, you will often think that,
Yeah.
and so yeah, you have to build a really special deck for this, and to slam just 15 bad items just to make this effect consistent is
Yeah.
not the way to go.
No.
These items must be good. So looking into the future, I think this card will be at some point could be really powerful.
Yeah.
If we have more really powerful items and that do, I can imagine about better items that provide you removal, like
Mm,
this poisoned apple or something,
mm.
with which all are really bad right now. Or this fang crossbow, or what do we have? Everything, but
Yeah.
that's probably two less good items to make a complete deck around this card and queen. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, these go into the binder for now, right next to the Jim Hawkins on the page that at the top says cards that immediately become like instantly busted with the right spoiler in the future, right? Like Jim Hawkins is sitting there meaning that there's only so good of a location and so big of a location that can ever be printed before he becomes game breaking. And it's the same true for Oswald, right? If they make it limits the items you can make in the future if there are any that are sort of like super expensive, super good, this becomes a lot better as an enabler.
And one card that fills kind of the similar role like your like this two-cost item like you think of is the I love this new Jim Hawkins. I won't say he's busted because you laugh at me, but I really like the effect of him because it's really really strong. When you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal any number of pirate character cards and put them into your hand. Put the rest at the bottom, and it's a pirate himself and inkable. So you will play this 4 times, and you will have a really, I don't want to say draw engine, but it's in a deck full of pirates. It's very strong. 4/7 bodyguard.
I think when you first said to me that you were really high on this card and I was laughing, like, what are you thinking? It was before a lot of the good pirates had been spoiled, and now I am coming around to it. The pirates that we've seen, there are some really, really good options there, and I've not really experimented with building anything yet, but like it has, to me, it has like the same vibe as the Brooms deck, as there are a bunch of good cards here that are like probably good enough for a tier 3 deck that actually sometimes you'll just completely crush some tier 1 decks with. And it's right there, but it's probably not like tier 1 competitive. But just can't say yet. I've not tested it. But based on what I sort of thought the deck would shake out looking like, the stuff that's been spoiled has been significantly better. If you are a pirate fanatic and you're someone who, regardless of the strength of pirates, is going to jam a pirate deck, you're probably extremely happy. It's way better than it has got really any right to be.
I will try to make something work like this. I mean, Amber Steel is my. You have Hook, you have Piglet, you have Smee. There are some pirates that.
Yeah, these are all good cards. Yeah.
And Mufasa, I want this with. I will try this. If this flips out of Mufasa, you are wow. This is something. But I agree
want
with
that
you. It won't be a tier 1 deck or something. That's not what I want.
I want that to happen for you. I want you to flip one of these gyms out of a Mufasa, and I want it to happen once so that you can just let that thought lay to rest and move on with your life after it happens one time. But it will be a glorious one time.
I mean, I had to be honest, Mufasa, it's always laughed about, but I had 2 Mufasas in my Birmingham run. And it's not easy to win against them. They do powerful things. If they need one good Mufasa flip, and you are in a really bad spot, especially on the draw. I mean, it's not that this deck is ha ha ha. They can't win against me. You're sweating a lot of the time.
No. Yeah, and there's a steel Mufasa deck that a few people played. I saw someone made day 2 with it in the Vegas challenge last weekend, and it looks really cool. I think it's a great build. I tried to make a bit of steel Mufasa work.
With the Tinkerbell and the shift Tinkerbell, and so this was cool.
Yeah. There's some cool stuff going on there. And it's like a nightmare matchup for green purple. It's just not something that we can beat. If you really ever have to face that sort of thing, like, yes, they have some pretty bad matchups, right? Like there are a lot of decks that can beat them quite easily. We are not one of them, and one of the guys that made top 64 with green purple, he finished 4th. I think his name's Aubrey. Yeah, shout out to him. He had a great run. He played, I think, had to play against Steel Fassa immediately in the top 64, and I saw that and thought, like, that is about as bad as luck gets. It's not just a deck you would never expect to play against. It's uniquely bad for your deck to have to play against it. I hope he came out of that smiling.
Additionally, how we built our last versions. I mean, in the past with Ursula and doubles Mother Knows Best, and so that there was times where it was a good matchup, but we don't have it anymore.
For a while, it felt unlosable with those lines because they couldn't stop your Ursula. You would stick that, and then you would just bounce back their dock and their 2-drop or whatever, and the game was pretty much over for them. But yeah, that's not how it feels now, because we can't really play that anymore. It's a little soft to some of the other decks.
Okay, we have over an hour. One last card, and then I'm finished, and then you can say if you have one card. And that's You Came Back. Looks very scary to me. It's just an action. It's so unspecial. It's just an action that says ready one of your characters. Ready chosen character. That's everything. And that character can quest, they can quest again, they can challenge, they can do everything. You can just keep it safe. I could see some crazy combos with this. This is a card that could see play, I think.
Yeah. Like you say, the strength of this card is in what it doesn't say, right? Which is that all these readying effects have the condition of can't challenge, can't quest, whatever it may be, the conditional restriction. This just says ready it. Sometimes the text is as simple as like 3 ink, gain 3 lore. Sometimes it could be like, I don't know, I don't want to speculate on what other people are cooking, but there are some targets for this that go crazy. And out of respect to brewers, I don't want to lift the lid on their sauce, but this can do some stuff with some of these high cost
and
cards.
Simply cards like that, if Green Steel with a new Gantu or something, it's 8 lore. Okay. 8 lore, your turn. So yeah, nobody will happy about this combo in this if this happens. So this could see play. That's the last. I think the last.
Yeah, if it was, I mean, every spoiler season, I hate saying this because I could say it about every single uninkable card. But if it was inkable, this would be a way more versatile and awesome card. But I think because of its potential power, it has to be limited somewhat. So, but I still think there will be at least experimental decks that want this as a maybe even a 4 of.
Yeah. So I think I said everything I wanted to say. Do you have a card left that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I got all of mine. I had some others, but you said pretty much all of them. Last one on my list I have not talked about is Prepare Your Bot, the 1-cost blue action that you can ready an item. I won't talk about it at length because we've been talking for a really long time, but in my mind, I think Blue Steel has the option to move towards being a way more combo-oriented deck. Their ability to just stick the 6-cost Aerial and then next turn play a dime, activate it, and quest with Aerial and gain 10 lore in 1 turn. It was already very good at doing that. Up that to 15 for 1 extra ink. That's pretty good. Lots of people are going to tinker with. Yeah, lots of people are going to tinker around with combo type decks because there's loads of bait for it in this set, right? There's loads of those action matter cards, there's Maui and things like this that you might just try and go off with. There's the You Came Back that's going to enable some cool stuff. There are various avenues to go down. Gut instinct is that some form of Blue Steel that just plays 4 Prepare Your Bot will just be the best way to have these combo-esque turns because all the pieces, apart from this 1-cost action, are already absurdly good cards in that deck. So, yeah, keeping a close eye on that for sure.
Yeah, that's reasonable. That's reasonable. Okay, we have talked about a lot. We will try to do this every week now. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked our first insight. I think we will talk about this set, then last reveals maybe next week. Maybe we will talk about some first brews we saw or we even made. So be excited about the next week's episode. I hope you liked it. You can always leave comments what you didn't like, or you can leave what I would really like. So such comments like, "Oh, your dump asses! This card is S tier and you didn't say it. What is this shit? I will never see your videos again." That's comments I like.
You are more resilient than me.
No, I'm happy about it. Yeah, we will see us next week. I hope you liked it, and yeah, until next time. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.